Okay, tonight's shir is Lili Nishmas Reb Shlomo Avram ber Mechoel HaKohen Olav Shalom, and we're about to start. So the shirim have been divided into two separate shiurim. One I prefer to call one Sur Mirah, and the second one I say Tov. Sur Mirah as in getting rid of the chametz, all the stuff related to getting rid of all the negative. And then the second shir we'll be having with Hashem on Thursday will be about Asay Tov, about doing good. I will just mention today was the 27th of Adar, which, as we all know, the Rebbe suffered a stroke twice on this day. And it's a day that allows us to think about the Sur Mirah and leaving Golus and Asay Tov and doing good and getting closer to Gula and start experiencing Gula, especially nowadays when we see all these Nisim and nowadays, the Nisim that tell us that's the coming of Mashiach very, very soon. I'm going to get right into it. Chazal tell us that from Purim and onwards, we're supposed to start teaching Shoylim V'Doshim, we're supposed to start teaching the Halachos of Pesach. Chachamim HaRishonim made a rule that Bizman Beis HaMikdash HaYikayim, in the time when there was a Beis HaMikdash, that the Darshanim should teach publicly 30 days before every Yom Tov about that Yom Tov. In the case of Pesach, from Purim onwards, because in Eretz Yisrael, people had to bring karbanos associated with the Yom Tov. Anybody who lived in Eretz Yisrael had to bring three different karbanos: a carbon for visiting the Beis Hamikdash, a carbon in two other karbanos for Yom Tov, Shalmei Chagig and Shalmei Simcha. There's all kind of laws associated with a carbon. There's things that blemishes that invalidate a carbon, other things that invalidate a carbon. So there was a rule that you should teach all about Yom Tov 30 days before. That will remind people to prepare their animals, make sure they have kosher animals, and 30 days before, people will have enough time. Now, this is the halacha today as well. We're supposed to learn the halachas of Yom Tov 30 days before, that we should be expert in the halachas and know hamaisa sheyas and that which we're supposed to do. So what we're doing right now is indeed that halacha of learning 30 days before Yom Tov, all about the Yom Tov. And there's many other things that we do within 30 days before Pesach to make sure that we're in the frame of Pesach mind in case we still didn't realize that Pesach is hitting us. Anything that you do within these 30 days, you have to be careful. You do it in such a way that chametz shouldn't be attached to it, which will make it much more difficult when it comes right before Pesach. One of the things that is associated with pre-Pesach is there's an established minhag in all communities. There in every community is a tax on the people in the city. They should supply all people in the city with wheat for matzahs or all other needs of Pesach. Today's day and age, it's not wheat anymore. None of us is taking wheat and grinding and making matzahs. We usually buy ready-made matzahs. But the idea is to supply tzarchei hachag, the needs of Yom Tov, anybody that needs the needs of Yom Tov, whether it's matzahs, whether it's dalat kaisis, needs of Yom Tov in general, which is clothing for Yom Tov, foods of Yom Tov. And that's an important thing called otherwise known as mois chitim or kimcha de pischa. In order for us to experience our freedom, the proper way for us to experience freedom is when we know that someone else has what they need to have. This applies to men, it applies to women. Women also have the mitzvah of tzedakah, particularly women have the mitzvah of tzedakah. There is a general discussion about women giving tzedakah when the money belongs to the husband, but in America it's a very common thing. In our society in general, it's a common thing that husbands give the wives big amounts of money. They don't particularly care. In a lot of ways, today's day and age, more women give tzedakah than men giving tzedakah, because it applies to men and women equally. Now, people often ask the question if this mois chitim fund could be given for meiser. Can you use your meiser money for that? So that would depend really. Is this an absolute obligation? Is it a tax? If it's a tax on the community, then you can't use meiser for that. Or is it tzedakah? It's a good thing just to give extra tzedakah. The Alter Rebbe uses both terms, tax and tzedakah. So practically speaking, nowadays, the community is not taxing anyone. We don't have a community which forces people and dictates that you must give mois chitim. And if it's a regular form of tzedakah, and you would be able to use meiser money. There are those that are stringent and say you shouldn't use meiser money, but if you follow the strict rule, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to use meiser money. Still, it's best to give a minimum amount for the mois chitim from your own money. You want to have the schus of doing mois chitim. If you're taking your meiser money, there's no extra schusim that are attached to you. You took money which is already set aside for tzedakah, and now you're channeling it into a mois chitim fund, into a kimcha de pischa fund. So you didn't really accrue any extra schus. By taking from your own money, which is not tzedakah, not meiser, then you achieved a tremendous schus. So take a bit from your own money, and then the rest, you want to give more, give from your meiser money. One of the other things that we start from 30 days before Pesach, from Purim, is that we're careful. It is our minhag to be careful not to eat matzah. According to Halach, you only now let eat matzah from Erev Pesach. Some people start from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and our custom is from Purim. The general custom is that even if the matzah is technically chametz, people are careful about, but in a matzah which is not even fit for eating on Pesach, not because of chametz, just because the way it's made, it's egg matzah, it's kneidlach, it's cooked matzah, that you can't be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah, there's no meaning to be careful with that, and that you can have 30 days before Pesach freely. One of the things that the Rebbe encouraged very much, perhaps you can say is the first mitzvah that the Rebbe made, is to be mezakes harabim, to have the public have the schus of the mitzvah of matzah shmura. The Rebbe asked specifically rabbanim or shachtim or communal people, or any that he has a lot of associates, to arrange that their associates should have, at least for this darim, round hand-baked matzah shmura matzah. In places where they make public darim, like in hotels, then arrange that people should have handmade matzah. It's not enough that we have handmade matzah, we want to accomplish that others. The Rebbe used the expression, and this is printed on the Kudasichas, that if you start working on having shmura matzah, then eventually all non-shmura matzah bakeries will close down because everybody will start using shmura. That's a very strong language that Rebbe used. Now we try they should have at least a kazayis of handmade matzah, or all the kazaysim, at least the middle matzah, if not all three matzahs, for both starim, or for the whole entire Pesach. So it depends what you can accomplish. But at least get them to have the kazayis of the mitzvah of matzah should be handmade matzah. People that are making public starim should try to work on making two public starim, because it's places where they arrange only one seder because they don't have enough money, whatever the reason is. So it's important to make sure we have two starim and arrange that people should have handmade matzah. The Rebbe encouraged this mitzvah of distributing handmade matzah very, very strongly. Nisan is a month of Geula. Chazal tell us we were redeemed in Nisan, and we're going to be redeemed in Mitzvah Shem and Nisan as well. Nisan, generally, the whole entire month, in Shulchan Aruch it says it's treated like a Yom Tov, because every other day there's something special about throughout the month of Nisan. Since most of the month has special Yom Tov attributes to it, we treat the entire month as if it's a Yom Tov, and that's why we don't say Tachnan, etc., etc. The Shalar writes on the pasuk, HaChodesh Hazel Lechem Rosh Chadashim, says the Shalah, HaChodesh, the entire month is like a Rosh Chodesh. Every day in this month is like a Rosh Chodesh. The whole entire month is called Zman Cherusein, is the time of our freedom. It's called in Medrash the Chodesh Shel Gula, the month of redemption. It's not just Pesach, it's the entire month. And there was an occasion that the Rebbe asked that we should try to make every single day in Nisan a Fabrengen. Not sure how that works very well with Ezras Nashim, but to arrange a Fabrengen, because it's a Yom Tov. Every day of Nisan is a special Yom Tov. So just we should appreciate the special lichtige, heilige tag that are coming across. And as mentioned earlier, because this is a very special holy month, every day of this month we don't say Tachnun, we don't say Av Harachmim Shabbos before Musaf, we don't say Tzidkascha Shabbos Mincha, and it is our custom as well that whenever we don't say Tachnun, we don't say Lam Datseach Mizmor David Kapitel Chaf in davening, and we don't say Tefillah David after Asher V'Altzin, and so on. The Frierdiker Rebbe instituted that if you don't say Kapitel Chaf as part of davening, then after davening, not as part of the structure of davening, but as the Tachnunim and Tehillim that you're saying, to add the Kapitel Chaf right before you say Tehillim after davening. Because it's a Yom Tov, also the month of Nisan, you shouldn't be fasting. There are no fasts throughout the month of Nisan, with the exception of Tainas B'chodim, the firstborn fast night of Pesach, and Chas and Kala on the day of their chuppah. Even if the chuppah is on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, there's an exception to rule. They fast, otherwise there's no fast in the month of Nisan. Nisan, the custom is that people don't go to a Beis HaChaim to go visit Kvarim. Somebody who has a yahrzeit in Nisan, the custom is they go Erev Rosh Chodesh to go to the Beis HaKvaros. If they didn't go Erev Rosh Chodesh, and they have a yahrzeit in Nisan, so this Rishus, it's okay to go in Nisan. It's not against halacha, but we're careful not to say those extra tchinas that we say throughout the year, which is like tachnim. We don't say those extra prayers. When you're going to a kever of a tzaddik, that's very, very different. We're going to a kever of a tzaddik, we're not davening for the tzaddik, we're davening for the living people, that the tzaddik's chus should protect the living people. He should be a meletz yosher, and that's perfectly fine to go on Nisan, and that's the custom to go on Nisan as well. The Rebbe Rashab's yahrzeit was Beis Nisan. Of course, people would go to the oil and Rastav on Beis Nisan. From Rosh Chodesh Nisan onwards, it's brought down in halacha. There's a custom that we say every day a section in the Torah and Parshas Nasi of the Nasi. Every single day of Chodesh Nisan, from the 1st of Nisan to the 12th of Nisan, there was the leader of each tribe, the Nasi, brought a carbon, a sacrifice. and every day we read the section printed in the siddur of that nasi. On the 13th day, after the first 12 days pass, the 13th day of Nisan is a section called Zois Chanukah Samazbech. We read until the very, very end. And then because there's 12 tribes and there's the tribe, the Shevet Levi, that corresponds to Shevet Levi. And after we say that Nasi section in the Siddur, we also say the Yi Ratzon, it's printed in the Siddur. And that Yi Ratzon, we say that if we belong to a particular tribe, then the sacrifice, the karbanos of that Shevet, that tribe should bring down special inspiration and encouragement for me, for my children and grandchildren, and so on and so forth. That Yi Ratzon is said by anyone, regardless of which tribe you belong to. Even if you're a Kohen and a Levi, you know you belong to the Shevet Levi, you still say that as well. Women say it. Even converts say the Nasi with the Yi Ratzon, even though they don't belong to a particular tribe, they're converts. That doesn't make a difference. Everybody says it. If you forgot to say the Nasi, there's often people that send out reminders. Don't forget the Nasi, which also means that's not what there's a hidden meaning. Don't forget the Nasi. Don't forget that we have a Nasi. We have a Rebbe. But anyhow, if you forget to say the Nasi, so you could still make it up at night until the break of dawn. You could say the Nasi. You could even say the Yi Ratzon as well. If, however, you forgot to say it, and it's not the next day, you could say the next day, but you can't say the Yi Ratzon anymore because it's not the same psukim. That's perfectly fine. The Yi Ratzon is that this is the carbon of today. You're selling yesterday's, so the Yi Ratzon doesn't make any more sense. The Rebbe encouraged that we should strengthen this custom of saying the Nasi and the Yi Ratzon. It's very precious, and it's not written in the Torah, but anything which was not in the Torah is from the rabbis of some minig Yisrael. A minig has, in a way, is even more precious. So we should strengthen this minig. It's a very unique Yi Ratzon. There's no Yi Ratzon like this found anywhere else in the Siddur. That all the special holy sparks of this tribe, everything should have an effect on me and all my children for all future generations. That's a very powerful thing. And since Chazal tell us that whenever you learn about a carbon, it's as if you brought that carbon, you brought that sacrifice. So from Rosh Chodesh Nisan onwards, every time we're saying the Nasi, we are actually bringing that sacrifice, because when you learn about it, it's as if you did it. Another thing that happens from the month of Nisan is, in the Gemara it says if somebody goes in the month of Nisan and he sees trees that are blossoming, you make a special blessing. Some people argue that the month of Nisan is not literal. The Rebbe insinuates that the Rebbe writes that the Alter Rebbe insinuates that the month of Nisan is literal. It means specifically Nisan. You can do it before Nisan. You shouldn't be doing it after Nisan. Certainly, according to Kabbalah, it's the case that it's specifically Nisan. So if you're seeing trees, or even a tree which was planted in a flower pot and is blossoming, there's a special bracha that we make, thanking Hashem that Hashem created a world which is nothing missing and has nice people and nice, beautiful trees for us to enjoy. It's a bracha printed in the Siddur, in the Birchas Hanenin section of the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur. It's not printed in the regular section of the Siddur. That is a bracha they make the first time you see fruit blossoming that year. Once you saw once fruit blossoming, you don't make the bracha again. If you saw once a tree like that blossoming, and now you're seeing, and you didn't make a bracha, do not make a bracha the second time with Hashem's name. You could say without Hashem's name. This is only if it's a tree that produces fruit, not a non-bearing fruit tree. You could say it on a tree that bears fruit, even though the fruit is not edible. And we say it before the fruit is growing, when it starts blossoming. Some people are particular to have two trees. That's a chumrah. You don't need that. The bracha applies for men, applies for women. You should not make. There are those that say if we should, it's a chumrah not to make this bracha on a tree which was still within the years of Arla, which is the first 3 years of the tree when the fruit are forbidden. If you don't know if it's Arla, it's fine. Or a tree which is a murka, which was combined when you craft together two types of fruit. There's no problem making this bracha on Shabbos and Yom Tov. According to most poskim, that's perfectly fine. If you did not make the bracha and the flowers start falling off, and now the fruits start growing, the Alter Rebbe says you should make it without Hashem's name. Now it's a question if you can still make the bracha, so you say without Hashem's name. If, however, there's still some flowers, there's fruit, but there's also still some of the flowers, some of the bud, then you could say with Hashem's name as well. So that's in terms of the special bracha called Birchas HaIlanis. Let's move on. One of the things that we do in the month of Nisan, we prepare for the Rebbe's birthday, Yud Aleph Nisan. Way before Yud Aleph Nisan comes, the Rebbe's birthday, it's a time to think about Achlotas Tovas, good resolutions for this very auspicious day. In addition to the preparation for Pesach, the Rebbe asked in the past that if people wanted to give him gifts, they should give him spiritual gifts like learning extra Torah and so on. There's a lot of purchases that we need to do for Pesach. We have to make sure we have shmura matzah. We have to make sure we have wine. There's a preference to use red wine specifically on Pesach, unless the white wine is more favorable, is a better wine. during the year, there's a question if red wine is preferred, but Pesach, there's an advantage in red wine because of the color associated with the makas dam, with the schus of bris milah, which because of that we came out of Mitzrayim. So that's so time to purchase wine. Haggadah should be bought, sidurim are bought. Matzah covers bechers. It is our custom that we use a kiddush cup of becher. We use specifically one which does not have a stem. Some people are not particular about that, but Chabad custom is the general custom among Anash is not to use a becher, a kiddush cup with a stem. The Rebbe encouraged we should buy for Pesach for every child. They should have their own Haggadah, preferably a Haggadah for kids with pictures of the various different events about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So it will make the Haggadah much more accessible and associated with it for the children. Children should write their Hashem, that everything belongs to Hashem, and then put their name. We should buy for the children a new siddur for Yom Tov. The halacha is that you're supposed to buy for children on Yom Tov, you're supposed to give them special sweets, delicacies, kloyes ve'egoizim. In those days, that was roasted wheat and nuts. So certainly, if you give them mundane matters to make them happy, you certainly should give them holy matters to make them happy, like a nice, beautiful siddur. Pesach requires a lot of preparation. And even those that have the custom that they have a special Pesach apartment, a special Pesach kitchen, they also have to go through a lot of preparations. The Rebbe writes this and he mentions that he didn't see that our Rabbeim should have a special Pesach kitchen, a Pesach apartment. But either way, everybody has a lot of preparations, a lot of work that has to be done, and we're going to try to go through various different things. One of the things that we have to take into account is things that we might forget. So, for example, some people get regular Amazon packages, and it could be food. And food, they get regular food, Amazon packages, food which could be a question of chametz. So you're supposed to make sure if you have a fixed standard delivery before Pesach, cancel your delivery that you shouldn't have chametz delivered to you on Pesach, which belongs to you. There's a mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov. We're supposed to be happy on Yom Tov for all 8 days of Pesach. We're supposed to be happy, a person, his wife, his children, and his entire family. It's a mitzvah, hasem et ha-Torah v'samachta b'chagecha, every Yom Tov. Now, if there's one way how men become happy in Shulchan Aruch says with wine, with children having the sweets for them. But for women, it says you're supposed to buy them clothing and jewelry as according to your level of how much you can afford. So that's a mitzvah for men. It's a mitzvah min ha-Torah to make sure that the women are happy, buy them clothing and jewelry. That's an important mitzvah. In addition to all the other Pesach expenses, is equally important, if not more important. There are many chumras that go on Pesach. The custom is that these chumras associated with the Isra of Chametz start from when we're not allowed to eat Chametz. In some cases, people are lenient on Erev Pesach. In some cases, they're lenient when you're cooking food before Pesach still. But generally, all these customs start from Erev Pesach, from the time when you can't eat Chametz, and they go all the way until the last day of Pesach, with the exception of Gebraks, wet matzah, which the custom is not to be particular about on the last day of Pesach. And most of these customs apply when you're cooking before Yom Tov for Pesach. The general meaning is to keep all these customs. Talking about chumras, stringencies, the Arizal writes that if a person is careful, even from a mashu or chametz, he goes out of his way. He can't have even a tiny bit of chametz, mashu chametz. The person goes out of his way to be careful. Hashem promises him that he will not sin throughout the entire year. What does that mean? That means that accidentally no sin will happen to him. Of course, a person could choose to do the wrong thing, but if a person does the special, goes out of his way to be careful not to have a mashu chametz, Hashem will arrange that he shouldn't have accidental sins. When I say a mashu chametz, that means it's anything that's visible. If it's not visible, that's not called a mashu chametz. If a person keeps Pesach properly, keeps all these chumras, that yoyel and nafshis will help him throughout the entire year in everything that he does. One of the reasons that Pesach has more chumras than other things, because the very first mitzvah that we got in Mitzrayim, and we accepted this mitzvah out of love, and we were very particular about it. So the way the chumras and hidurim is supposed to be done out of love, not as a stressful thing. And the more you're particular about it, the person extends himself to be particular. Hashem extends his life as well. The Alter Rebbe quotes in the name of Arizal, we should be stringent with kol chumras, with all the stringencies. Obviously means chumras that have a source. Torah de chumras, not made up stuff. And we shouldn't make fun of any minig, of any custom. Everybody has their own way, has their family customs, so we shouldn't make fun. But you have to be careful. Sometimes a chumrah could be what we call a chumrah de asel de kula, a stringency that leads to a leniency. So you need to know what's secondary, what's more important. And sometimes you try to take on an extra stringency, which is not required, but that leads to something else that's negative. So you need to think about anything they take on. If is it suitable for you? Is it suitable for this place, for this time? It has to be suitable according to the environment. The Rebbe Rashab once said, "Far chumris habich zeir moed." I'm very strict of stringencies. So when it's done, it has to be done properly. And taking into account that the halacha says you should never say how kama toirech Pesach zeh, Pesach is too difficult for me. In the Haggadah we have 4 sons. One of the sons is the Rasha, the wicked son. And the wicked son says, Ma avodah zois lachem. This is so difficult. Why do we need to have this bother? So when we say how difficult is Pesach, that's basically saying the same thing as the Rasha, as the wicked son. Now, in Shulchan Aruch it's brought that a lot of people are not particular about this. And one of the ways to defend the fact that a lot of people say, oh, it's too hard, is because the wicked son, when he says it's too difficult, he means he's talking about the Korban Pesach. It's a bother to bring the Korban Pesach sacrifice. Now, Korban Pesach is a mitzvah in the Torah. Nowadays, people are saying about all these extra chumras, all these extra stringencies. So therefore, that's not forbidden. Oh, but not forbidden is one thing, but not being in the spirit of the law is another thing altogether. The Rebbe Rashab wrote a letter to his wife, to the Rebbetzin, and he wrote to her, I'm asking you, du sollst dich nicht anstrengen mit dem Pesach. Don't overwork yourself in Pesach. Mit Pesach machen. Du darfst hieten im Gesund, you have to be careful with your health. And Hashem Yisbarach soll dich hieten, and also Hashem will protect you in everything. So when we do Pesach, just make sure that we don't overdo it. So we're going to go through some of those chumras. There's something called matzah ashira, wet matzah. Strictly speaking, if you have a dough that's kneaded with fruit juice and has 0 water in it, and it's not chametz, according to the ikar adin, according to the strict halacha. The custom is that we are stringent and we don't have dough made with fruit juice because there might be a tiny bit of water, and if there's a tiny bit of water, it's real chametz, and it gets even chametz faster than dough with water. And if we don't eat that in Pesach, and that minhag is not allowed to be changed, unless we're talking about an old person or a sick person that needs to have matzah with a dough with juice, wet matzah, egg matzah, for example. So Ashkenazim, we don't even give a hechsher on something like that. Amongst Ashkenazim, this is absolutely tray for Ashkenazim, except, like I said, for someone who's sick who needs it. Machine matzah. So the Rebbe Rashab writes in a letter that the great rabbis, the God-fearing rabbis in the previous generation forbade machine matzah. They did not want, some of them didn't want to reveal their reasons because they were afraid they're going to say the reason, people will start arguing their reasons. But they were absolutely strong about it that it's forbidden. Some of them even wrote that it's chametz gum, it's absolute chametz. So how could we, chas v'sholom, go against their words? I am not in agreement with this, absolutely, Rebbe Rashab writes. We should not come up with new things. We should go follow the path that our ancestors did and not use machine matzah. Now, I have to mention the machine matzah of then didn't use regular electricity the way we use it today. Nowadays, everything's electric, just press a button. In some ways, it's much worse. Now, we don't say it's chametz gomer, but the Rebbe Rashab does mention there were those that said that it was chametz gomer, and therefore we have to be very careful. The Rebbe was asked, should we give machine matzah to kids? And the Rebbe's response was, why? Matzah is emunah. Emunah, faith, you have to work from when you're a young child. It says that a child could only say the word father when he tastes grain, when he's the age that he knows how to eat bread or grain, that he could say the word father. So Chassidus tells us that in order to announce Father, our Father in heaven, about Hashem, once we taste grain, once we have matzah, then we start recognizing our Father Hashem. So the Rebbe commented and says that wasn't referring to a machine matzah. That was referring to the real, authentic, original matzah. Now, when it comes to other stringencies, even with regard to gebraks, it's not so serious that if kids have that. But machine matzah, mashinava matzah, not. From a chinuch point of view, we even try and make sure kids don't have gebraks. We'll talk about gebraks in a moment. But machine matzah we don't give to kids. And part of the Rebbe's matzah campaign was to make sure that people have handmade matzah, at least if they're not having for the whole Pesach, at least for the Seder, for the mitzvah of matzah, to have handmade matzah. Kitnius means things that are not made out of the 5 types of grain. You could make a food out of it, rice, lentils, millet, and it wouldn't become chametz. There are those that say it's a problem, but strictly speaking, it wouldn't be chametz. In Ashkenaz, which we are all Ashkenazim, the custom is to be serious about this and accepted that we can't have it on Pesach. Ve'ein l'shanis, this is not allowed to be changed. The expression used that if somebody violates the prohibition against kidneys on Pesach, he's deserving of misa b'dei shamayim, of the death penalty, and he's violating lo yisasser, a rule that's been accepted by the rabbis, considered a binding rule. So much so that even if Eliyahu Navi would come with his bezdin and Shmuel Navi with his bezdin and all the Gedolei Yisrael, they will not be able to take off the Isra of kidneys, which has been accepted by Klal Yisrael. The Tzemach Tzedek writes, even in times of desperate situations, people don't have what to eat, they should not cook kidneys on Pesach. What are kidneys? Rice, peas, peanuts, millet, chickpeas, sunflower seeds, mustard, buckwheat, poppy seeds, beans, lentils, soy, sesame, corn, and many other grains. Quinoa is kidneys. There are certain agencies that give a hechsher for quinoa, and there's a lot of pressure because the national agencies, one of them gives hechsher, the other one has to give a hechsher, although many leading Rabbanim have proven strongly, conclusively, quinoa is a new food that wasn't used that much, or we don't know much about it from previous generations, and therefore some wanted to argue that it's not kidneys. It's very hard to accept that argument, so you will find in the stores quinoa with a hechsher on Pesach. It should not be used. Kidneys oil is also a problem. That would mean peanut oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed, canola, sesame, soybean. These are all a problem. Now, oil that's not made from kidneys is not really a problem, especially a Pesach-made oil. Some people have a chumrah, they don't use any oil on Pesach. There's an opinion like that. You shouldn't use any oil, just schmaltz, just chicken fat. If somebody has that family custom, that's fine. That's because it is a gzeira, this shit of the Dagel Mervava. Other oils shouldn't be used because people might use kidney oil, but that's not the halacha. Cottonseed oil, some are stringent to consider it kidneys. Strictly speaking, cottonseed oil is not kidneys, but you will see certain products for Pesach that are made with cottonseed oil, and it will say in it, for those that use cottonseed oil on Pesach, because there are those that want to argue that cottonseed oil is kidneys. Well, that's not mainstream. The problem with kidneys is only eating. You're allowed to enjoy, have benefit from kidneys. You're allowed to have it in your house. And for somebody who's sick or for a child that needs it, you're allowed to cook kidneys. You need to check the kidneys very, very well. Sometimes it has grains mixed into it. You should have separate designated dishes for the kidneys. Ideally, if you need to cook kidneys, you should do it in fruit juice, not in water. Better to use other kidneys than using rice, millet, and buckwheat that are more severe forms. But there are some baby formula, which is kidneys, and if a baby needs it, then you should give them the kidneys, but use separate dishes for that and not mix it with anything else. Some places there was a custom on Pesach, and it's brought down in Pesach, and many places they didn't eat dry fruit on Pesach. They didn't eat salty food, they didn't eat cloves, they didn't have honey, they didn't have sugar. All these foods that in a lot of places, particularly if you know for a fact it has no chametz, not talking about kidneys, but these foods that I just mentioned, you don't have to be strict. Some took on the idea, even with a hechsher, they're not going to use it. My grandparents didn't have it in Russia, as the expression goes in Europe, then I'm not going to have it either. And there's room for such an argument. Many people have the custom that they have sugar on Pesach, but they cook it before Pesach. The idea of cooking before Pesach is that it turns into a wet mixture. And the wet mixture, according to many opinions, if there's potentially chametz in it, it becomes nullified. Before Pesach, chametz could be nullified, on Pesach not. Now, if something becomes nullified before Pesach, it could be reawakened on Pesach, possibly. But if it's wet, if it's a liquid, then it doesn't, according to many opinions, it doesn't get reawakened on Pesach. So if there was chametz, it became well nullified. The Rabbeim didn't have sugar at all on Pesach, but some people have sugar and they boil the sugar first. Another chumrah on Pesach is wet matzah. It is the custom among Hasidim and some non-Hasidim as well. It's not unique to Chabad to not to have wet matzah except for the last day of Pesach when we're particular to make sure that our matzah is wet. So we cover our matzahs on the table. The reason the matzah is always covered is in case water falls on it, or we don't want the matzah to fall into water or into soup. If you have a keli, a dish that had in it wet matzah, we don't use it until next year. Whenever you're pouring water or liquid which has water into a cup or plate, you make sure there's no matzah. And when we wash our machrenim, normally during the year we move our hands over our lips with the water to wipe our lips. We don't do that on Pesach until the last day. Children were particular also about wet matzah, although, like I said, it's not as serious as machine matzah. The Alter Rebbe writes that the issue of wet matzah is only with water. We're not so particular not to make matzah wet in fruit juice. So we don't make egg matzah, we don't make the dough of the matzah and mix in fruit. That's called matzah ashira, that we can't have in Pesach Ashkenazim. But if you have a baked matzah, then now we're particular not to put it in water. Water, yeah, but fruit juice is fine. Fruit, that means fruit juice that has no water in it. If you're sure that this fruit juice that you have has no water, so some people would want to put avocado on their matzah, technically that wouldn't be a problem. The Alter Rebbe writes, Pshita the Ein Lahachmer Klal. It's obvious you don't have to be stringent at all, but that would be, you have to be careful that the water, no water got on the avocado, no water got on the knife. Ideally use a plastic knife that you're going to smear the avocado. Some people are particular and they have good reason to be particular. There's reasons to be particular, but you don't have to. The Rebbe Rashab was not particular about it. The Alter Rebbe writes not to be particular, and so on. Spices. In the charosis, there's officially in 5 ingredients brought down: apples, pears, nuts, ginger, and cinnamon. And that's brought down in Kabbalah as well. The Rebbe writes that it's our custom for many years already that we don't use ginger and cinnamon in the charosis because of concern of chametz. What's the concern? It's a concern about spices. Now, it could be this doesn't apply when you're making your own ginger, you have it growing in your backyard, but commercialized stuff generally are not used. Vodka, whiskey, those things are not used in Pesach. Now, usually they're chametz anyhow, but you could have a vodka which is made, a Pesach vodka. Rabbi Akiva Eiger wrote an Isser against it. That's how they quotes this, and we don't have that on Pesach. They say that the Mezritch Maggid once said the reason not to have these beverages on Pesach because you're not supposed to be drinking bramfen, alcohol, when you're taking medicine. Matzah desires is a food of healing. So if we're taking medicine, we shouldn't be drinking. Anyhow, that's a word in the name of the Mezritch Maggid. The Rebbe Rashab once walked into the Seder of the Bachrim, to the Bachrim's meal, and he saw them eating radish on Pesach, and he said, "Don't you know that it's a tzedek for Bay to eat radish on Pesach?" And he didn't give a reason. So there's a custom that in our circles we don't eat radish on Pesach, and this is a custom brought down in halacha in certain Pesachim as well. They also bring a custom about garlic not to use. In many Chabad communities and families, there was a custom not to use garlic on Pesach. I'm talking about still in Russia. Poskim bring such a custom. They say there's no reason for this custom, but if people have such a minig, you shouldn't be lenient about it and not use garlic on Pesach, similar to radish. Peeling. The custom is not to eat fruit and vegetables unless they're peeled first. So there are those that are lenient if you're cooking before Pesach. A lot of people are lenient not to peel, but certainly on Pesach, everything is peeled first, especially nowadays when they put a lot of sprays on pesticides on these fruits and vegetables, so there's even more reason that they should be peeled. Eggs. There's a custom not to use on Pesach a pot in which eggs you can't peel if you're cooking the eggs. So we cook them with their peels, but we don't use that pot for anything else. The women have their own separate set pot for eggs. It is not our custom to rinse the eggs before Pesach. You have to make sure before Pesach there's no dirt on it. Make sure look at the egg at the cartons to make sure there's no dirt or chametz on it. If there's a concern of chametz, then of course you should wash it off with cold water before you cook it. Some people say when you wash over the eggs, you're getting the germs to go into the eggs, and therefore only wash it right before you're using it. Just pointing that out. There is a custom brought down in halacha not to buy stuff on Pesach from a non-Jewish store because there's crumbs while they eat, which could go if you're buying oil or honey, stuff that are not chametz, but the crumbs could go into it. The Rebbe Rashab was needed to buy for medical purposes. He had to buy almonds, and he was careful that it should be bought dafka before Pesach and in a store which doesn't sell any chametz. So putting it out there. A lot of people have this custom, they buy everything before Pesach. Some people have the custom, they cook everything before Pesach. And the idea behind it is, again, the idea of bitel b'shishon, that before Pesach it's easier for things to be nullified. So if there was chametz, then it becomes nullified. Eating in other people's houses. The Alter Rebbe said that Pesach you don't offer anybody else to eat or drink. If they want to take themselves, that's fine. You give them a possibility to take. But you don't make life difficult for people because they have hidurim. They can take whatever they want. So a lot of people actually don't eat in other people's houses because everybody has different chumras. And so it's hard. You go to someone else's house, you don't know what the standards are. Generally, Pesach, it's a good idea to keep the Ashrei Yoshrei Veisecha. Ashrei Veisecha is better to be at home. The Rebbe writes that Pesach, the Rebbe wrote to people that wanted to travel away for Pesach. Pesach, generally, people are home with their family. Besides, for the reason of Hidr, it's very hard to be so particular about the way you want when you're in someone else's house. But B'chlal, Pesach is a time when you're with family. It's a special thing. It's not a time to travel. Today's day and age became a very common thing, but I'm just quoting what it says in the sources. As part of that idea of not eating in other people's houses, there is a custom that people do not use commercial products. Patik as much as possible. When I say as much as possible, things that are necessary and there's no other choice without it. Simple things, not complicated things. You can make it yourself. It was made before Pesach, has a proper hechsher, so everybody defines what's considered the bare minimum. But the bare minimum people don't use, unless it's the bare minimum, especially people don't use commercial stuff except spices. Poskim talk about it, the different chaim, the different matil. A lot of them talk about it. Even stuff with a hechsher could be a problem before Pesach. They are hechsherim, but there's standards amongst hechsherim. There's often that could say a beautiful, nice letter that's kashering of Pesach, and I've seen kashering of Pesach even on things that are absolute chametz. So this is mentioned in poskim, but we've seen it as well. Poskim bring that on Pesach we don't put on the table things that are not Pesach dig. You never know, it could have chametz in it. We cover. Also brought on the poskim, we cover any shelves, anything that you don't want to put things directly down on a table, on a shelf, on a counter. Everything is covered. This has nothing to do with the fact that it was used for chametz, but you never know what's there. When you want to take water on Pesach, so poskim talk about wells, and they talk about the fact that you would filter the water when you take it out of the well. It should get only clean water. But because of that, we also put filters. We make sure that the water in the sink is filtered, besides for the issue of bugs, which is a whole year issue. I'm talking specifically now in New York. I'm talking specifically now a Pesach issue. So we don't have to worry there's chametz there, but in sometimes we actually know that in the reservoir they actually has for sure real chametz crumbs. So then you're absolutely required to make sure that the water is filtered. The Friedrich Rebbe writes that before Pesach, when they would open up their wine bottles, they would make sure that the bottle opener doesn't touch the wine. Again, talking about a chumrah, it's mentioned by the Friedrich Rebbe. Pesach also talk about if something falls in a place where there could be chametz, we don't eat it on Pesach, even if it was kosher, that place. So strictly speaking, the place was kosher, big deal. So the way that custom is kept today is that anything that falls on the floor, food or dishes that fall on the floor, we don't use it until the following year. It's mentioned as well that the word bread should not be mentioned on Pesach. The Rebbe spoke about the word chametz, so the word chametz shouldn't be mentioned on Pesach. So these are a range of different chumras. I didn't mention all of them, some of the common stringencies about Pesach. One of the ways to get rid of our chametz is selling chametz. Now, some people have this thing, they think that the selling of the chametz is supposed to happen right before Pesach. That is not correct. You could start selling as early as possible. The office is usually open the Chodesh Nisan onwards, not before, just for practical reasons. But it's better to come earlier. It makes no difference if you locked up your stuff or didn't lock up your stuff, that you could sell go to the Rav and authorize the sale. You're not actually selling it. You're going to the Rav and authorizing him to sell it on Erev Pesach, because that could be done earlier. Let me explain more what Mechiras Chametz is about, because there's a lot of mistakes and misconceptions. The Torah says that we can't have chametz in our possession on Pesach, and on Erev Pesach already we're absolutely obligated to get rid of our chametz. If we have chametz in our possession and it stayed in our possession on Pesach, then you can have benefit from it after Pesach. It doesn't help the fact that it was closed and locked up. So locking up chametz is not what you're supposed to do. You're not allowed to have it in your possession. But if there's a large amount of chametz and you don't want to lose it, so the solution is you could just sell it and it's not yours. You don't only sell it, you actually rent out the area. The area where the chametz is kept, that closet, whatever it is being rented out to a guy. Now that the chametz was sold to a guy and rented out, the chametz could stay in your house, because it's actually not in your house, it's in the guy's possession. You will not violate the Isra of Bal Yirah, Bal Yamatz. You shouldn't have chametz in your possession, because it belongs to a guy and it's in a guy's property right now, because it was rented out as well. There are many rules how to sell chametz, so we usually get a Rav that knows how to do this, and we make an our agent. We have an authorization form. We authorize him that he should sell it for us with all the halachas. Because if it wasn't sold properly, you are the person owning the chametz is over Bal Yirah min haTorah. It's not just a min rabbanan. It's actually as if he had chametz in his property on Pesach min haTorah, which was quite a serious thing. The Alter Rebbe wrote a bunch of rules about how the sale should take place, including among that the Rav has to have, the goy has to come with a guarantor called the non of Kabbalah. Not everybody sells according to the rules of the Alter Rebbe. That's important for us. That's extremely important to want to make sure not to be over in Bal Yirah min haTorah. Chametz after Pesach that was sold not using a non of Kabbalah is perfectly fine. You're allowed to use it. But the Isra Midrabanan of chametz that Pesach has passed and someone had chametz, he didn't sell like the Alter Rebbe wants. You're allowed to have the chametz after Pesach. But before Pesach, your chametz, you should definitely be careful to have it sold properly. Now, the chametz that's being sold, which is staying in your house, which is technically that area is the guy's property, that has to be locked up and you need to make a sign, a mark, to know that that's sold. First of all, we need to know what's included in the sale. So only the places that are marked are included in the sale. Secondly, you want to make sure you don't come to that place by mistake on Pesach and go into that area. A place in your house which has chametz gomer, proper real chametz, needs to have a mechitza, a fence, a wall, a separation of 10 tfachim high in front of the chametz. If it's in a closet with doors, just close the door and make a mark on the door. This is a proper sale. This is not a joke. We sell even real chametz. Some people don't sell real chametz. In Chabad, that's not an issue. It's 100% sale, so you could sell real chametz. The Rebbeim sold real chametz too. And the reason we're selling it, we could technically just say kol chamira and nullify our chametz, say everything is null and void. But Chazal said it's not enough just to nullify your chametz. You need to get rid of it. So we don't want to. If we don't want to get rid of it, so we could sell it. But when we're selling it, then what we're saying really is that we're not nullifying it, because nullifying means that you're not planning to get it back. The chametz that you're selling, you're planning to get back after Pesach. So it actually never became null and void, and therefore, if the sale wasn't done properly, it's a problem that the chametz was in your possession on Pesach. Now, you want to sell the entire house and not do bedikas chametz? You can do that. You can sell everything, but you should really leave one area that's not being sold. So you should be able to have the mitzvah of bedikas chametz on the night of the 14th of Nisan. If you're going to be leaving your house before the night of bedikas chametz, so you could do bedikas chametz in the place you're going to be getting to. So either you do it in your, if you're going to be in your house on the night of bedikas chametz, so you can leave one area that you're not selling. That's fine. If you're not going to be in your house, you already left. So you'll do bedikas chametz where you are. If you're staying in other people's houses, if you have your own chametz there, you could do your own bedikas chametz. He could do bedikas chametz for you, but you could do it yourself also. But if you don't have your own chametz there, there's no mitzvah bedika. If you want to have the mitzvah bedika, go bring your own chametz there. Some people have this thing, they make a kinyan and they try to buy off the room where they're staying. But either way, even if you do that, you still should be yotze the bracha from the person who you're staying by and listen to his bracha. There are cases where mechiras chametz won't help you. For example, you have a car. You could sell a car, it's fine. But you can't just say, I have a hard time cleaning my car, so let me just sell the entire car. And then you're going to go drive in the car as well. That you can't do. Also, if you have real 100 chametz gomer, proper chametz, and you can't make a mechitza, a separation, a 10 tefachim separation, you can't sell it. You have to get rid of it. If you have crumbs and you don't want to clean your house and you just want to sell, the selling works because you're selling real chametz. If you're only selling crumbs, that's a problem. If somebody has pets that need to be fed chametz on Pesach, that's not simple. You can't just rely on the mechiras chametz. You need to talk to a Rav about this. If there's other members of the family that have their own chametz, they need to do their own sale. You can't just rely on someone else sells chametz. Every person has their own chametz. And another very important thing, if you're traveling on Pesach to a place where Pesach comes in earlier, so there's man on Erev Pesach, the time you can't have chametz is earlier, and you're selling it, for example, somebody's traveling to Eretz Yisrael, to Europe, and he's selling it over here in America. So the Rav in America is selling it Erev Pesach in America, but it's already the Zman in Eretz Yisrael. You told the Rav about this. Some Rabbanim, myself included, do an early sale, especially for those people. The Rav needs to be informed. Though the Yisrael Seif HaFrashos Chal should not be sold, should be destroyed. Also, some people are strict not to sell chametz on one shelf in the closet or one shelf in the fridge and use the rest of the shelves. There's stringency that should not be done. It's better not to do that. Medicines on Pesach. Some people need to take medicines. You can't just decide I'm not going to be taking it because it's chametz. You need to get a heter from a Rav that you could not take your medicine. It's not so simple not to take medicine. And any questions you have about medications, all those questions should be done way before. Don't push it off to the last minute where you might not be able to get hold of a Rav. The mitzvah of bedikas chametz doesn't have to start the night of Erev Pesach, the night of the 14th of Nisan. It could be done earlier, as long as it's done by night to the light of a candle. But whenever you're doing it earlier, you do not make a bracha, and you have to be careful you don't bring chametz into that room again. So if you want to start early, that's a great idea, and leave one room that you will do, so you should have the mitzvah the night of the 14th. Practical example. Somebody's going to be going to work on Yom Tov. Now, he doesn't want to, therefore his workplace is not selling. He's going there on Yom Tov. He's going to be using it. So you don't have to go schlep to your workplace in Manhattan the night of bedikas chametz. You can search for it earlier. Just make sure that after you do bedikas chametz, you won't bring a chametz in there. When people clean a room and they want to put on Pesach bedikas stuff, so ideally, after you clean it, do bedikas chametz. Take a candle or electric flashlight without a bracha. Before you put in your Pesach stuff, check it for chametz. Don't rely, you're going to check it later the night of bedikas chametz. When you move a fridge or you move a closet, you're going to push it back. Do bedikas chametz now. It's actually a problem if it's within 30 days before Pesach. The Rebbe Rashab said that often people want to make a a room in the house Pesach Dig. So later they forget to do biur chametz there. And if they do it, they don't really do it properly. It's already there's things there, there's fruits, there's vegetables, a bunch of things there. They're not going to be doing it properly. So better to do it before, when you want to make this room now Pesach Dig, do biur chametz the night before without a bracha. There's a lot of cleaning going on, and we're going to get to that soon about the cleaning before Pesach. I want to go through a few other things first. The Rebbe was sent to us Michtovim Kloliyim, general pastoral letters before Pesach. Those are powerful letters over the years. Many, many letters, sometimes 2 or 3 before Pesach. Again, doing it for Rosh Hashanah also. And it's a good idea to study those Michtovim Kloliyim. The Rebbe asked them to be translated in English and in Hebrew. The Rebbe sent telegrams for Pesach. It's worthwhile to learn them. There's special letters that are associated with the same calendar system of this year. Pesach starts on a Thursday. The letters for that calendar system. There's letters that generally talk about Pesach. I'm putting that out there. People should recommend to learn that. One of the things that we do before Pesach is kashering kalim. I'm not going to go through all the halachos of kashering. It's a bit lengthy. And there's a lot of halachos about kashering. The Alter Rebbe writes in so many different details, and not everybody knows them. You should get someone to kasher, only someone who's a ben Torah who knows the halachos of kashering. He says nowadays everybody just kashers, they don't even know what they're doing. So we actually put together, you could go on the website asktherav.com, there's a document called Kashering Made Simple for every single type of dish, how to kasher it. And there's a number, there's 6 systems of kashering, 1, 2, 3, you look at the right number and it matches up. So you could look there. If you have any further questions, you could submit it on the website as well. You don't have to kasher brand new dishes. Some people have such a chumrah, but you don't have to kasher brand new dishes. Generally, the custom is that people kasher their tables or their counters, and they cover them. And people often ask, why am I make myself crazy both kashering and covering? So there's a reason for this custom. First of all, some people are concerned that it wasn't really cleaned properly, and there might be a tiny bit of chametz there. Some chametz might have remained there. So therefore, they have it covered. They're not going to put food on it if they don't cover it. Some materials, not everybody agrees, can be kashered. There might be there's glue in it which might not be kashered, etc. Some areas might need a higher level of kashering, blowtorching, etc. But blowtorching might destroy it. The kashering is supposed to be done in a pot, in a kli rishon. When you're pouring onto a counter, that's already a second choice solution. That's not the preferred way to do it. So therefore, people would rather cover it. Also, the reason why people cover it, because kashering in general is not ideal. It's a mitzvah and a mucher. Ideally, you should get new stuff on Pesach. It's mentioned specifically about knives, but the chumrah is about anything, not to kasher, not to rely on kashering. So if we kasher and cover, we also covered it. So why just not cover it? Why do we have to kasher altogether? Just cover it. So first of all, the reason why we don't just cover it, we also kasher it, because it's not enough to cover. If you have a chametz hegedish, you're supposed to lock it away. You're not supposed to just cover it. Also, if you just cover it, sometimes it tears the covering, sometimes there's moves, and it can be a chametz problem. Also, sometimes heat passes through the covering, especially if there's liquid there, and that could be a halachic shayla on Pesach. So therefore, we try to cover all our bases, excuse the pun, cover all our bases. We kasher and we cover. And we should not push this off till close to Pesach, do it in advance. There's a custom of doing it 3 days before Pesach, brought down the Pesach. I'm going to go through the order of the calendar till Erev Pesach, and then we're going to go through a few other halachos of Pesach. One of the things it says we should do before Pesach is take a haircut. It doesn't have to be done Erev Pesach. You're not supposed to come into Yom Tov menuvel, not looking properly with long hair. The reason you're not allowed to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed because they wanted people to take haircuts before Yom Tov. So therefore they made a rule that you're not allowed to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. So do that in advance. Also, this year, Shabbos HaGadol falls out the same way it fell out when the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim. Pesach falls out the same way. Shabbos HaGadol is on the 10th of Nisan. Pesach is on a Thursday. 10th of Nisan when Miriam passed away, which was on a Shabbos. But talking about Shabbos, Friday night, we just changed the clock over here in New York. And the custom is not to make Kiddush from 6 to 7. But now that we changed the clock, that would be from 7 to 8. But over here, it's actually not 7 to 8 precisely. It's 6:56 to 7:56 over here in New York on daylight savings time. So people should be aware of it because they're not used to that because they just changed the clock. Shabbos Haggadol, after Mincha, we say the Haggadah because Shabbos Haggadol is when all the Nissim started happening. We say the Haggadah from Avodah Me'inu until the Chapel of Kolve, and they say no. And because Pesach is a special time, we emphasize children. So it's a good idea to focus on children on Shabbos Haggadol. We do a lot of things that children shouldn't sleep on by the Seder. But on Shabbos Haggadol also we should spend time with our kids and explain to them the Haggadah. Ma'ariv after Shabbos Haggadol, Matzah Shabbos, we don't say V'hinoyam about the Kaddish because whenever there's no 6 full days of work, since there's Pesach coming up during the week, we don't say V'hinoyam about the Kaddish. And if people did not do Kiddush Levana yet, they should do Kiddush Levana remember to do that Matzah Shabbos Kiddush Levana. When they make Havdalah and you're using clothes for your Besamim, since we don't normally use clothes on Pesach, so we should put it away. The following day, Matzah Shabbos, and Sunday is the Rebbe's birthday, Yud Aleph Nissen, when we start a new kapitel Tehillim, kapitel Kuf Chafei, and the Rebbe encouraged people to learn the kapitel Tehillim with Mefarshim. The idea of saying the Rebbe's kapitel, staying the Rebbe's kapitel, and learning the Rebbe's Torah includes in it is a keli for all special brachas, and it brings down the brachas that the Rebbe already gave. There should be mekuyim, the Rebbe writes, and it also brings down new brachas. 2 days later is Yud Gimel Nissen, the Artzad of Tzemach Tzedek. It's a day that we, like every other day in Nissen, we don't say Tachnun. But the interesting thing about it is the first 12 days of Nissen is the Nasi. So every day the Nasi brought a carbon, it's a Yom Tov. Erev Pesach is a Yom Tov too. Pesach is a Yom Tov. What happened in Yud Gimel Nissen? So one of the explanations is because nothing really happened in Yud Gimel Nissen, but if most of the days are holy, so we just treat Yud Gimel Nissen holy too. Alternatively, Yud Gimel Nissen was the Isru Chag for the Nasim. 12 days they brought Karbanas, and now the day after Yom Tov is also a celebration. And on that day, as mentioned earlier, we don't say the Nasi, but we say the section of Zois Chanukah Samizbech, and there's no Yiratzin after that. One thing that we do on Yud Gimel Nissen is people who have false teeth, people that have braces, retainers, fillings. So there's a form of kashering that people do. They kasher their false teeth, or their retainers, all of that, which we'll talk about that momentarily. But 24 hours before they do the kashering, they should stop eating hot or sharp chametz. So usually the kashering happens before the last time when we can eat chametz on Erev Pesach. So the day before you give listen, 24 hours before, you should stop eating hot and sharp chametz. Now, I'm up to Yud Gimel Nissen, and I'm going to mention something which might surprise some people. That in Shulchan Aruch it says before B'dikas Chametz on Yud Gimel Nissen, you should clean your house. The reason it surprises some people to sweep and clean the room before B'dikas Chametz on Yud Gimel Nissen, many people start, I don't know, Hanukkah time. But in Shulchan Aruch it's mentioned in association with the laws of Yud Gimel Nissen. I've heard that there were certain communities that would take a broom, and that's how it became Pesach. There was none of this long, lengthy preparations of cleaning. Our houses are much bigger today. It's a bit harder, so we might need more time. But I want to go through the laws of cleaning, but I put it over here specifically to give them trust on us to put things into focus where it's mentioned in halacha, so we should know how much we have to spend on it. Not necessarily you need that amount of time. It's mentioned that you should sweep and clean all of anywhere you're going to do b'dikas chametz, including under the beds that people sometimes are not careful. What needs to be cleaned, what doesn't need to be cleaned. So as a famous expression, Schmutz is nishkan chametz and Kinder sein nishkan karban Pesach. Dirt is not chametz and children are not a Pesach sacrifice. So dirt is not an issue, chametz is an issue. A place where chametz is never brought in, b'dikas chametz doesn't have to happen there. And if chametz is never brought in and you don't do b'dikas chametz, you also don't need to clean it. A place that's being sold to the guy, and if it's not being used over Pesach, you can't sell a room and use that room also. You could sell a closet and lock off that closet and not use it. So if it's being sold according to the Tzemach Tzedek, and we follow that position, b'dikas chametz doesn't have to happen. If cleaning doesn't have to happen. Kidneys do not have to be sold, and if you don't have to search it, you can have a place full of kidneys, and that's perfectly fine. Any place which has chametz less than a kazayis, a small amount of chametz, and it's dirty, soiled, it's not normally edible, not edible for a dog. That's not what I'm talking about, not fit for a dog. It's just dirty. You won't eat it. You don't have to clean it. You could have crumbs on the floor, that's fine. And certainly if you have a messy linen closet that has nothing to do with Pesach, that's a spring cleaning issue. It might not look suitable, but it's nothing to do with cleaning for Pesach. So let's go through a cleaning plan. First of all, whenever you check an area and you clean it, you should make sure that everybody else in the family knows that this room was cleaned and now this room is off limits to chametz. It's also easier when you start with the low traffic rooms that are much less likely to have chametz in it. So, for example, bedrooms and bathrooms, and be careful, make sure the toiletries and medicine cabinets are checked, the closets are checked, clothing pockets, garbage cans, under the beds, toy storage areas. Also, there's basements people forget about, garages people forget about, coat closets. These are all the areas should be checked. And you move on from the low traffic to the high traffic until eventually you come to the kitchen or the dining room that you leave for more later. Your couch needs to be checked. It's a bit hard to clean a couch, a upholstered couch, or there's a lot of pieces of chametz that get in there. So one of the techniques is it's easy if you just pour a cleaning agent, which makes the chametz inedible. And if once those crumbs are inedible, it's not really a big deal. Just make sure you don't eat it afterwards on Pesach for two reasons. Number one, it's chametz. Number two, it's not safe. Backpacks should be checked. Coats, I mentioned coat closet, coat pockets should be checked. Cars, car seats, glove compartment. Now, car seat, again, similar issues. A lot of crumbs in the car, in some cars. So it's almost impossible to clean. Get a good professional cleaning. Put some cleaning agents, which makes the chametz inedible, and warn your children not to eat anything from the car on Pesach. We're up to the night of B'dikas chametz. We swept and cleaned. But even after you sweep and clean, you need to do B'dikas chametz. In nooks and crannies and cracks, maybe there is some chametz left. Didn't we sweep? Because sweep doesn't help for cracks, for nooks and crannies, for areas that you don't. In order to do B'dikas chametz, you need to have l'oir haner, to the light of a candle by night. Now, some areas you could see, but nooks and crannies and cracks you can't see unless you move your flashlight or a candle. So when we do B'dikas chametz, we're supposed to do B'dikas chametz as if nothing happened, but only in those areas that you couldn't see when you cleaned. A place that you could just feel, so you could have checked that earlier. Also, today's day, people are much more lenient with B'dikas chametz because when we clean, we use so much cleaning agents that it's all dirty and it doesn't really need B'dikas chametz. We still have to do B'dikas chametz because even if you search your whole entire house, you need to have one room that you leave for the night of B'dikas chametz. And part of our B'dikas chametz is make sure there are no places, cracks that you didn't notice, or maybe there's a place that wasn't cleaned, or maybe it was clean and chametz was brought in afterwards. So it's just sort of double checking everything. The custom is that we put pieces of chametz all throughout the house, pieces that will not crumble up, wrapped separately, closed in a way that it shouldn't open up. Don't wrap it with silver, which doesn't burn well. And we do that before B'dikas chametz, that the person that's searching for chametz should find those pieces, but that's not what he's searching for. That's in case he doesn't find anything, at least he should find these pieces. But the idea is not to search for these pieces specifically, it's to search for chametz in general. According to Kabbalah, we put out 10 pieces, and it's advisable to have a piece of paper which you prepare in advance and have somewhere written down every single place where you put those 10 pieces in case something gets lost. All the pieces together should ideally be a kazayis. When you put them together in the bag and the spoon and you put it all together, you'll have a full kazayis to be mekayim the mitzvah. Before you do B'dikas chametz, all other chametz should be put aside. Any chametz that you're going to be eating, don't let it be in a place that people can schlep it around, put it in a place that it's not reachable. Before you do B'dikas chametz, about a half an hour before, you're not allowed to eat. If someone else is doing the B'dika, not you, you're allowed to eat. But those who are doing B'dikas chametz shouldn't eat. Eating does not include fruit. Eating means mezonos or bread more than the size of an egg. You're not supposed to learn, you're not supposed to do malacha, you're not supposed to take a shower. The custom is we do it right after Ma'ariv. The Alter Rebbe says that Chazal gave a set time for B'dikas chametz. If you're not starting to do B'dikas chametz on the right time, it's not lazy. It's avaryan. You're going against what Chazal said. So you shouldn't delay it at any moment, because even to learn, they don't let you. You might get carried away with learning. So you daven Ma'ariv right away and go do B'dikas chametz. If you didn't do B'dikas chametz right away, do it later. And whenever it is, you're not allowed to eat and learn and do all those things until you do B'dikas chametz. Many have the custom of washing their hands before B'dikas chametz because it's a chashuv a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that we're doing. The kavod yamtiv should be done properly after we wash our hands. Sorry, apologies a moment. And before B'dikas chametz, we make a bracha. We make the bracha in the room that we're going to be starting to search. So we shouldn't make a bracha and then go somewhere else. We have family members there with us to hear the bracha that are going to be helping us with the search. L'chatchila, these family members should be men that are adults that are 13 years and up, male adults. They shouldn't talk, and they should start doing B'dikas chametz right in that room, because After the bracha, they should start the bedika right away, and then they can move on to other rooms. Between the bracha and starting to search, one is not supposed to talk, even about bedikas chametz. If a person spoke something not related to bedikas chametz right after the bracha, they have to make a new bracha. Ideally, you shouldn't talk about non-bedikas chametz matters throughout the entire bedikas chametz. Bedikas chametz is done with a candle. A candle is good to be able to look at nooks and crannies. A small wax candle. If there's a concern of fire, you can use a flashlight. It's perfectly fine, and you don't have to turn off the electricity. It's better to leave the electric lights on. We check every single nook and cranny. Any place there's a concern that maybe there was chametz there. Even if you're sure you never ate chametz there, it's a place that chametz could go in there. You should check it. In a place with his kids, or even very low places that people don't normally go, their kids could have put chametz there. Make sure to check the car with an electric. Don't check the car with a candle. It's absolutely dangerous. With a flashlight. Some people are lenient and they check the car by day. They do bedikas chametz by day, but really it should be done. There's room to be malamet chuz, but it should be done by night. If you're planning to go to your workplace on Yom Tov, and if it wasn't included in your sale, it's not locked away and sold, then the bedikas chametz has to happen. So you go from your house, don't talk until you go to your workplace, and you check your car, your workplace. It's all included one bedikas chametz. The Rebbe writes that our custom is laharich biyoser, to spend a lot of time on bedikas chametz. A lot of people think that bedikas chametz, whatever chametz you found, you have to burn. No, you don't have to burn it. You have to get rid of your chametz, so you can eat it. It is our custom to have 10 pieces for burning, but get rid of the chametz by hook or by crook by the time of Zman biur chametz. After you finish bedikas chametz, check the pieces. Make sure you have 10 pieces. If you have one of those notes you wrote down where every piece is, mark off each piece where it was found. If you didn't find one of the pieces, you need to really do over bedikas chametz without a bracha. You know where that piece is, just which room it is, just check that room. If you checked again and you still can't find it, then we have no choice. We have to rely just on the bitel chametz. After you checked again and you can't find it. That's why it's good to have one of those papers written in advance where every piece is. And all the chametz that you found, any chametz that you're saving, you're going to be burning or eating, make sure it's protected, that it shouldn't be schlepped around kids, mice, lahavdil. This is not just good advice, it's a halacha. You have to be careful. Your person is not careful in putting aside the chametz properly. He's over on the Isser that Chazal said the chametz has to be put away properly. Any chametz that's in the house should not be left open, should be locked up after bedikas chametz, because otherwise it defeats the purpose of bedikas chametz. Make sure all the last items of chametz to be locked up, that's going to be sold to the guy. And after you do bedikas chametz, you say kol chamira, and you nullify the chametz. Nullifying the chametz means that you, in your mind, all the chametz that you have is as if it's non-existent. It's like dirt, like earth. As you have no need, you take your mind off all the chametz, it becomes ownerless, and then when you do that, you don't have the avera of balida or balya matzah. You need to say the words kol chamira, but it's not just saying, it's having that in mind. And you're supposed to say it in a language you understand. There's no point in saying it in a language that you don't understand. What you're nullifying right now after the bedikas chametz is chametz that you're aware of. Sorry, chametz that you're not aware of. Any chametz that you didn't find by bedikas chametz, you're nullifying. The chametz that you know about, that you're planning to eat for tomorrow, you're not nullifying. How can you nullify and you're planning to use it tonight after have a pizza party after bedikas chametz? Or tomorrow morning, that you're saving for tomorrow morning to have mezainis. So it's only the chametz that you don't know about. That's in terms of the night of bedikas chametz. Erev Pesach, you're not allowed to eat matzah all day long. Our custom is from Purim, but according to Halach, it starts on Erev Pesach. A little child that doesn't know anything, doesn't know about Yitzis Mitzrayim, they're allowed to eat Erev Pesach matzah all day long. They'll eat the night before Kiddush. But once they understand about Yitzis Mitzrayim, you should not feed them matzah on Erev Pesach until the time of matzah. It is the Chabad custom that from the morning of Erev Pesach until Korach of the second night, we don't eat any of the foods that are going to go into charesis and maror, other than for the actual mitzvah of maror and charesis. You could eat chicken, you could eat meat, you could eat eggs, you could eat potatoes, you could eat onions, even though it's on the kaira. The problem is anything that goes into the charesis, the apple, pears, and nuts, and maror, horseradish, lettuce, etc. At a Pesach in the morning, we wake up extra early because we want to make sure if people are going to be eating, they're going to be eating before the time of Zman Achilas Chametz. We don't say in davening the Mizmah L'Soida, which is a carbon that's not brought in at Pesach, nor do we say it on Chol Hamoed. It's a carbon which has Chametz in it, so we don't say it on Pesach or at Pesach. We don't daven very long. We make sure to finish our daven quickly, so there shouldn't be any stumbling blocks by davening too long and then forgetting to do the mitzvahs you're supposed to do. Make sure you shake out and clean out your talis and tefillin after davening. If you're going to be burning the chametz early in the morning and you're planning still to eat chametz after you burn the chametz in the morning, until the time that you're allowed to eat chametz, don't say the second kol chamira that we say by day. Say it only after you finished eating, only when you get rid of all your chametz. I'm not going to go into the halachas of fasting for the firstborn. It's only relevant to some people. There's a special meaning that the firstborn fast, commemorating the nest that there was Sefer Makas B'Chodesh, and in the Pesach we have about that at length. The last time for eating chametz over here in Crown Heights is 10:51 in the morning on Erev Pesach. Until that time, you can eat chametz. After that time, you can have benefit from chametz, but you can't eat it. So before the time where you're not allowed to eat chametz anymore, you should clean your mouth, your teeth, rinse your mouth very, very well. Make sure there's filters on the sinks for people that be drinking water. And those who had false teeth, those are going to be kashering their mouth. So what they do is they put in hot water. They either put the false teeth and they pour boiling water over it from a kli sheni, not directly from a pot. If they're worried it's going to be ruined, it'll just clean it very, very well. Same thing with retainers. So if you take them out, make sure you don't wear them when you're eating on Pesach. If they're in your mouth, you can't take them out. Fillings, so what people do, they drink hot water, the heat that they can handle, without, of course, injuring themselves, and that's quote-unquote a form of kashering. And like I said, 24 hours before that, we don't eat hot or sharp chametz. Cigarettes, a lot of them have a shaila of chametz. One has to be careful. On Pesach, shouldn't go into problems of chametz. He has problems with smoking in Yontif in general. There's problems with smoking in general from sakana. There's problem with electronic cigarettes, but I'm mentioning the chametz aspect. In the office of the Rabbanan, we don't wait for the last minute to sell the chametz. We sell it earlier. So it's important to the place that you're selling to go do that much earlier, lock it all off and put everything away there. Make sure before there's biur chametz that all your garbage bags, your vacuum cleaners, everything is all the bags in the vacuum cleaner, all of them is taken care of. If ladies have rings they're going to be wearing, and they want to kasher it because of touch chametz, they should kasher it, and then not forget to do that. Shaking out the pockets or gloves. So the halach is that during biur chametz is supposed to shake out your pockets. Now, if a person never puts chametz into his pockets, they don't do b'dikas chametz, even though it says hamachmer if he's stringent, even then tavel bracha. The reason we shake out the pockets dafka by biur chametz, because you might have put chametz again into your pockets unknowingly on Erev Pesach in the morning. An important rule for people in New York, recently, the law is that we have to have our own garbage cans. And in our garbage cans, we put our garbage bags. That means the garbage cans belong to us, even if you keep it in the street. And if you have chametz in there, it's yours. So if it belongs to you, you need to get rid of the chametz before the service biur. One of the ways to get rid of the chametz is, if you didn't have a garbage collection, is to pour in it bleach or something else which will ruin the chametz, that it won't be edible. If the garbage can belongs to the city and you put it in the street and it's not on your property, as long as it's not your garbage can and it's not on your property, everything is fine. Service biur chametz is over here in Crown Heights, 11:54 in the morning. You should try not to wait till the last minute. After that time, you can't sell the chametz to a guy anymore. You can't have benefit from chametz. You're supposed to burn the chametz. Ideally, you should do it yourself, not get a shliach. If you do need to send some to do it, don't send a child. And a special fire just for the chametz. Make sure to, don't forget, take the 10 pieces with you and bring it to burn. And when we burn the chametz, then we say it's ideally the kol chamira that we're supposed to say is said at night to nullify the chametz. But it's appropriate to nullify again the chametz. This time we're nullifying even the chametz that we know of. By night, by b'dikas chametz, we're talking only about the stuff that we didn't know. What we know, we're going to eat, we're going to burn. We're not nullifying. Now, when it comes to burning the chametz, after we burn the chametz, now we're nullifying everything, including what we know about. Because in case when I was eating, there's a crumb that was left, and who knows what, we don't want to overvalue it. So it's a slightly different nusach of kol chamira that we say by day, and then there's a special yiratzim that is said by day by b'dikas chametz, a yiratzim about the burning chametz. If somebody chas v'shalom finds chametz in their property on Pesach, I want to mention how this is according to the halach and how this is slightly different today. In halach it says if you find a chametz Erev Pesach after the zman when you're supposed to burn the chametz until nighttime Erev Pesach shkia, or you find it on Chol Hamoed, you're supposed to destroy it right away. If you find it on Yom Tov or on Shabbos Chol Hamoed, you can't touch it, it's muktzah, cover it. So you shouldn't come to eat it. You let it move it without your hands, you let it move with your body, with your elbow, whatever it is, with your feet, but it's muktzah, you're supposed to cover it. Matzah Yom Tov, Matzah Shabbos, you burn it. When you're burning it, when it's Pesach, not on Erev Pesach after the Zman, when it's on Pesach itself, then if it's proper chametz and it's more than a kazayis, you actually make a bracha. The question is, nowadays, does this halacha still apply? Why should it not apply? Because nowadays, in our sales contracts of Mechilas Chametz to the guy, we try to cover all our bases and we write that any type of chametz that I have, and even this, and even this, and even this. So maybe this was already all sold, although it wasn't marked specifically, which makes a weakness in the sale, because it's very hard to sell something that nobody knows about. It was found underneath a desk somewhere in a room. So the question is, should we burn it? Some people say, don't burn it. It's not yours. It's the guy's. Put it together with the rest of the chametz. But in case somebody is worried that maybe the sale did not work for this chametz because it wasn't the official chametz that was marked that you're selling, so you could burn it, but without a bracha. It's not considered stealing, because if the guy is going to ask you for the money, you'll pay him back. It's okay to take it from the guy with the intention that you're going to pay him back. Have in mind that when you're taking it, you don't want to acquire ownership of it. Specify, I don't want to take ownership of this. Don't touch it. Push it with something and burn it, so this it's covered. You're not supposed to be on Pesach in a room which has chametz. So if there's an area which is locked and sold to the guy, don't go in there. Don't spend time there. If you need to go and get something, you need to get a piece of paper from that room. You can go in and out. The guy gives permission for you to go in the areas that were rented out for him. But otherwise, they shouldn't be staying in such an area. If somebody's in a place and he has to stay in a place where someone else is and they have their chametz, you should talk to a rabbi and find out how to do this. I'll just conclude with giving a bracha of a chag kosher v'sameach. Before the bracha, I will mention there's another shir that we're going to be going through the rest of the Seder of Erev Pesach, not about chametz, but more in terms of preparation for the Seder and how the Seder night works, all the halachas associated with preparation for the Seder and the Seder night, and so on and so forth. What I call the asay tov, the positive side, not getting rid of the chametz, but the positive, not getting rid of the negative. And that will be Mitzvah Shem on Thursday. Everybody, all the listeners to the shir, Masech Klal Yisrael shel chag kosher v'sameach. As the famous line goes, if your Pesach is kosher, it might not be that samech, it might not be that happy. And if it's very happy, it might not be kosher. Therefore, we wish each other that it should be kosher and samech. And the ultimate chag kosher samech is that we have the ability to see the gula mitzvah shlema, be in the Beis Hamikdash, bring a carbon Pesach. There's so many mitzvahs of Pesach that are associated not only with chametz and matzah, but with carbon Pesach, and we want to fulfill those mitzvahs. We're seeing now is the time Higiaz Mango Lascham. We're seeing the Rebbe has told us that we're in the time of redemption. We're seeing all the nisim that are telling us that Mashiach is coming every given moment. We're entering to the Chodesh HaGeula. We don't have to wait for that. We should have Mashiach now and our kashering of Pesach.